Hello students. So today we will start with the first unit of our course, High Performance Computing. In the very first lecture of this academic year 2020-21 semester 1, we already had discussed the syllabus. Means we had taken the overview of all 6 units plus the ebooks and all that also I have mailed you. And we had introduced ourselves also with each other. So now let us start with some points directly from the first unit. So this is the very first lecture of the content delivery in this online teaching learning process. So let us start. Before that, Institute Vision and Mission. Vision of our institute. Pune Institute of Computer Technology aspires to be the leader in higher technical education and research of international repute. Mission for that is to be the leading and most sought after institute of education and research in emerging engineering and technology disciplines that attracts, retains, and sustains gifted individuals of significant potential. Then department vision and mission. Vision of the department: achieve academic excellence through education in computing, to create intellectual manpower to explore professional, higher educational and social opportunities. Mission for that is to impart learning by educating students with conceptual knowledge and hands-on practices using modern tools, fast technologies and competency skills, thereby igniting the young minds for innovative thinking, professional expertise and research. So let us start. Unit 1, Introduction to the Subject. That is the title of the unit. So today I am going to cover, or you will learn these points. The outline for today's lecture is like this. You will learn motivating parallelism, scope of parallel computing, parallel programming platforms. In this lecture we will see implicit parallelism, implicit platforms. So there are various trends in microprocessor and architectures, out of which in your syllabus superscalar and View architecture is there. So this is the outline of today's lecture. Let us start. So why parallelism? Motivating parallelism. So students, up till now up to your third year, so all you have learned, or all algorithms you have learned serial computing, serial algorithm. So what the steps, one by one you are following the steps as per the algorithm. Let us say your quick sort, merge sort, anything, any algorithm, bubble sort. So one by one, line by line you will go. The computation, especially you were doing the serial computation. Let us say matrix addition, matrix simple. Let us take the simple example like matrix multiplication, matrix addition. Whatever may be the computation in that algorithm, you were solving that problem serially. So now in this year, fourth year, first semester, you will be introduced to parallelism, parallel computing. So actually that is the heart of our subject. So why all this exercise? Why? So obviously the by default objective of parallelism, why to go for parallelism, is to increase the speed of computations. So I would like to give you a very simple example here. Why? You should know why. So for example, matrix addition program, simple addition, matrix addition program is in front of you, and we will compare with serial and parallel. So we will speak a bit about that. So a matrix A and matrix B, 2 by 2 matrices are in front of you, and the computation which I have chosen to convince you the motivation of parallelism is C is equal to A plus B. Just I want to add the addition of these two matrices. So the result is like this. Result is also in front of you. So as a human, it's very easy how you got this result. See, you have added 3 plus 12, that is 15. 4 plus 10, 14, like this. As a human, let us map it to machine. So and map it to serial. If you want to perform this computation serially, so what you will do, you will simply write a simple for loop and prior to that for loop, you will input A, input B. Inside the for loop or inside the two for loops, you will write what? C of ij is equal to A of ij plus B of ij. So element by element, you will add the two matrices by machine also and by serial algorithm also, is it not? So first your two loops you will write 3 A of I, A of j. So you will add by machine 3 plus 12 like this, just as you have done it as a human, is it not? So let us think, can I do it in parallel? So if I want to do the same computation in parallel, so how will I go for that? So simply, so for computations, I will break this into 4 computations, is it not? So I will create 4 threads and I will give a task to add each element, add a element to a thread. Like 3 plus 12, this computation, sub computation, I will give to one thread. 4 plus 10, I will give to another thread. 6 plus 8, I will again give it to another thread. And 7 plus 15, I will give this task to the 4th thread. So that's where your parallelism comes into the picture. So, and my job is at last I will collect all the results from all the threads. So very important to tell you, some laboratories are also based on this, LP1 laboratories. Whenever you are testing your application parallel computing, you will have to test it on a very large data set. Then only you can comment on this statement, yeah, to increase the speed of computation. So what happens in smaller computations like this, you will not get the results convincing the statement. So here only 4 threads, and even you go by serial or if you go by parallel, so a bit same results related to time you can get. Why? Because thread overhead also we will have to take into account when we go for parallelism, which is not the case when you go for the serial, is it not? So that's why I keep on telling, or that is the basic requirement. When you are testing, test it on a very large data set. For example, here we are dealing with only 2 by 2 matrices. So we are adding only 4 elements, is it not? So if there are thousands of elements or 10,000 or lakhs, 10,000 or 20,000 elements we are adding as per the situation or as per the application, just see. Naturally, obviously, the serial computation or the serial program, it will take more time. So better to club the computations in sub computations and allocate the computations to different threads, and then finally you join the threads. So I hope the motivation is clear. So we will go ahead. Next, simple is for better utilization of resources, obviously like memory, CPU, if you go for parallel. So scope of parallel computing, so where it is used. So rather, where the question is where it is not used. So you can use it in everywhere. So applications like applications in engineering and design, scientific applications, commercial applications, applications in computer systems. So n number of categories are there. So I will give you as a homework, go through your textbook or go the reference already I have given you. For each category you find out, identify a particular application. So that is a homework for you. So why I am giving homework? So parallelly we are framing the questions also. So a very common question or obvious is motivation of parallelism and what is the scope of parallel computing. So parallelly I will also preparing the question bank, but let it be in your notebook. The requirement of notebook I had made very clear in the first lecture itself. You should attend a lecture with your notebook. So from time to time what I recommend, you make it a note. Definitely it will benefit you. So next, we will start actually with the architecture, that is pipelining and superscalar. So there are 2 trends. When you go for runtime, you go for pipelining or superscalar. and if you go for compile time, there is a glue architecture. So my focus in this lecture is on superscalar. So in next lecture we will see glue. So before directly starting with superscalar, so one slide is in front of you, pipelining. So you are in now 4th year. So up till now you are having CO background and hardware background. So there should not be any confusion when I say the word pipeline. You should be very clear what is meant by pipeline. So no problem, I will just repeat for all the students, though you know it. So what is pipelining? So one diagram is in front of you. So suppose just say how I will define pipelining is to increase the speed of computation or to increase the performance of the computation by overlapping the stages of what you can say, stages of the instruction processing. So fetch, decode and execute. So how an instruction it is processed. Suppose move r comma 10. So operand fetch you will have to do, then decode, next stage is decode, and then it will be executed, that instruction. So not necessary that only 3 stages instruction is executed in 3 stages. So these are by default stages. That's why I have with this diagram in front of you. So fetch, decode and execute. So just the diagram is telling you that suppose instruction in first instruction it is going on, operand fetch, decoding and executing. So at the same, so these are the vertical lines are your time units. Time t is equal to 0, t is equal to 1, t is equal to 2, t is equal to 3. So fetch, decode, execute, it is going on. So an instruction n plus 1, suppose second instruction, now this time unit it is idle. So in the next time unit, that at a time is equal to 1. So when the instruction the first instruction decode phase is going on, you can overlap it with the fetch stage of the second instruction. That is nothing but the pipeline. Means in single time unit, is 1 to 2, parallelly you can execute 2 instructions in part. So is it not? It is the overlapping of the stages of the pipeline. So I hope pipeline is clear. Next. So some sample codes you can see. So this is example of a two-way superscalar execution of instructions. So in short I will tell you. So there are 3 different code fragments for adding a list of 4 numbers. So 1, 2, 3. The logic or business logic is we want to add the 4 numbers. So 3 ways here are shown. So first, load R1, one number 1000, 1008, 1004 and 100C. So first 2 instructions, they are loading the 2 distinct numbers into R1 and R2. Then third, fourth, they are adding the next 2 numbers to that, like this. Just you please go through all the code segments. So next, so focus on the first. So concentrate only on the first 2 instructions. So load R1 comma 1000, load R2 comma 1008. So these are mutually independent instructions. I hope you agree. Nothing to do with each other. So it is a separate instruction. It is a separate instruction. Why? It is loading just 1000 into R1. It is loading 1008 into R2. Similarly, add R1 and add R2. 3 and 4. They are also mutually exclusive or independent instructions. Nothing to do with each other. Simply. But focus on 5th and 6th. So they are dependent instructions. So 5th is doing, it is adding R1 comma R2. And 6th is storing the results accumulated in R1 at the memory location 2000. Is it not? So 6th instruction, it is dependent on the results obtained by the 5th instruction, that is R1. 6th instruction will need R1. So these 2 instructions are not what you can say independent, they are dependent. So why I am telling you that? So we are now going to see the 2-way superscalar execution of instructions. So 2-way superscalar means what is superscalar architecture? So multiple pipelines it can have. So this is a two-way superscalar execution example. So two pipelines we can have. So two instructions I can issue simultaneously in this superscalar architecture, exactly in contrast with the previous. Here, just see, two instructions we cannot issue simultaneously. Only one instruction at a time we can issue. I am saying issue. So in time unit 1 I can issue only first instruction. In time unit 2 I will have to issue the second. So I am not allowed to issue this instruction here in this normal or single pipeline. So that is the speciality of superscalar architecture. You can issue multiple instructions simultaneously in a single CPU clock cycle. So here two-way superscalar, I am giving you example. So two instructions. But the thing is that, or the what you can say, the thing is that here that is decided. It is a two-way superscalar. So two independent instructions you can issue simultaneously. I will show you the timing diagram of the first code fragment, first 6 instructions. Only focus on first 6. If you want, you can write it down also. No problem. Focus on this. Next slide, I will have to scroll. Just say. Instructions are there, no problem. So this is the timing diagram. This is the execution schedule for code fragment 1. So just see, first two instructions, independent instructions, they are issued at the time t is equal to 0. So this is pipelining. This pipeline, it is having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stages. Whereas I had shown you the default is just fetch, decode, execute. So it can happen. It can have multiple stages. Your P4 Intel P4, it is having latest 20 stage pipelines. That reference is in your textbook, though I have not mentioned here. So first focus on, don't get confused. First focus on the number of stages. IF, ID, OF, E, WB, NA. All these are the 6. This is a 6-stage pipeline I am explaining you with superscalar, and it is a two-way superscalar architecture. So just see, two instructions I can issue simultaneously, but the rule is that they should be mutually exclusive, nothing to do with each other, independent. Next, which was not the case in the normal pipeline. So here, that is the speciality of your superscalar architecture. It is a two-way superscalar. So I have chosen, so two instructions simultaneously I can issue. Let us go ahead. The next two instructions also in the sequence are independent instructions. So I am allowed to issue them in the next time unit, that is 1. 1. So I have issued. The next come to the next two. So here just see, this is very important and very interesting timing diagram. So add R1, R2 and store R1, this 2000, they are not independent, as I told you, because result of first is dependent on the it is used in the second. So I am allowed to issue only one instruction issue. Obviously, after issuing the first 4 instructions in the sequence. So I have issued this instruction add R1, R2 at the time unit 2. Is it not? Let it be. Go ahead. And next, in the next time unit, that is at the 3rd cycle, I have issued this store. So that is the dependency. So I hope it is clear. So similarly, so at the last, I have given in the reference section the name of the textbook. So this I have referred from the your textbook itself. So you will have these diagrams and you will have these resources. So focus on the second, focus on the third. The same logic, it is divided in, it is written in again in different sequence. So for in second, load R1 1000, add R1 1004, add R1. Again, just see, these two are dependent. So unless and until you load, you cannot add. Just go through all the code sequences. So it is also an exercise for you. Now, example of a superscalar architecture. So in the previously I have given you the example of two-way superscalar. So in reality or in real world, four-way superscalar, your Sun Ultra Spark, it is a four-way superscalar. Means what? Four-way means if you are going for Sun Ultra Spark, four instructions you can issue simultaneously. That is the thing. So this is the example of four-way superscalar architecture. Now let us go ahead. So some slide is in front of you. So here so there are some types of dependencies or some problems or some dependencies when you go for superscalar architecture. There are three types of dependencies: true data dependency, resource dependency, and branch or procedural dependency. So true data dependency, just now we had seen. So result of an instruction is required for the subsequent instruction. So in any code fragment you can find. So where here, like the result of fifth, it is required in the execution of sixth. So it is called as true data dependency. Resource dependency. So finite resources shared by various pipelines. So here, for example, if you are having only single floating point unit, then what's the use of having multiple pipelines? So obviously the pipelines or all the instructions will compete for that single floating point unit. So this is called as resource dependency. So if you are having superscalar, no problem, but if you are having what you can say resource, instance of the resource, then the superscalar power is simply a waste. So this is also a dependency. Branch or procedural dependency. So here, so you know branch instructions. So branch destination, where to jump, it is obviously known at the runtime. So in case of errors, the whole pipeline, it is to be flushed. So it is called as rollback. So this is also a dependency actually it is inherited from your pipeline. So your superscalar is nothing but your multiple pipelines. So if you are dealing with single pipeline and branch prediction at the runtime and errors in branch prediction and all that, so just see the complexity it is increasing when you are dealing with superscalar, because in superscalar you are dealing with multiple pipelines. So that is also a dependency. So again you can frame a question: what is superscalar architecture and what are the dependencies? Explain the types of dependencies in the superscalar execution with the help of suitable example. So this terminology is also important. So true data dependency, resource dependency, branch or procedural dependency. I hope it is clear now. So next we will see how to resolve these dependencies. So obviously the hardware support it is required to resolve these dependencies, because you are dealing with superscalar architecture. So at the very first slide only I told you superscalar and blue, these are the two trends. So when you go for superscalar, you are dealing with runtime. When you are going for blue, you are dealing with compile time. So all this is happening at runtime. So hardware, that support should be in the hardware. Then only the dependencies can be resolved. So out of order issue or dynamic instruction issue mechanism, it should be there in the hardware. So what is that? So the processor should have the ability to look ahead of the instructions. So we can resolve the first dependency. Result of what is the dependency? True data dependency. Again I will explain you what all these terms means. Very simple. Just focus on this slide first. Now I will convince you what is out of order issue or dynamic instruction issue, and what is look ahead and window, all that. So we will go again back to our code. Yeah. So focus here on the third. So load R1 comma 1000, add R1 comma 1004. So there is dependency. Whereas again same, third and fourth are dependent. Third and fourth are dependent. But focus on first and third. First and third, they are mutually independent, exclusive, is it not? Similarly, focus on second and fourth, they are also mutually exclusive because nothing to do with each other. So what I want to tell you that what is that, look ahead. If the processor, so instead of going serially, here in previous case we are going serially, we don't have any authority to just change the flow of the instructions, is it not? So here, if the processor, if the hardware support is there to look ahead by some number of instructions, then we can issue the simultaneous instructions, is it? So like in this case, so if this is in order, if you are going in order, just see the third code fragment. The total, there is a total waste of superscalar capacity. Why? Because each and every instruction in the sequence, it is a dependent instruction. So as good as it is your normal pipelining architecture, is it not? So if the processor, it is having that look ahead capacity, so if the processor or hardware is having that capacity, so first and third, I am bypassing the normal in order flow. That's why out of order I am going. First and third, they are independent, so I can issue simultaneously. Second and fourth, I can issue simultaneously, like this. So here the window, by how many instructions the processor can look ahead, it is called as window. So window, here in this case I am considering window size 2. So by how many instructions, by how much window I can look ahead, or processor can look ahead, by 2. So here this is one what you can say way to resolve the true data dependencies using the look ahead. But obviously hardware support it is required. So that is all about this, how to resolve the dependencies by look ahead and not by that window mechanism. Only true data dependencies are resolved. So let us complete the view also and the difference also. So one concept from the first unit you will be with. Okay, next, I hope it is clear. So view architecture, it is not in detail, but you should know in contrast with your superscalar. Very long instruction word processors. So parallelism extracted by superscalar processors is limited by instruction look ahead, that is window. Just now we had seen, it is limited. So you cannot go out of order unless and until there is a look ahead. So how the then dependencies are resolved? So there is one more trend. So dependencies are resolved at compile time in view architecture. So static. So example of view is Intel IA64. And one example I had given you, 4-way superscalar is your Sun Ultra Spark. Yeah, next. So we will compare superscalar and view. Again, dependencies are resolved at runtime. Here, dependencies are resolved at compile time. Instruction issue mechanism is complex as it is controlled by hardware. So whenever runtime is there, so directly it will come to hardware. Now you know, and again it is a complex and costly, you can say. And instruction issue mechanism is simple. It is controlled by software, or it is a static. Static means your compile time. Then next, third, very important, more accuracy in branch prediction, because branch instruction, where to jump or where to transfer the control, it's known only at the runtime, so it is more accurate. And obviously compile time we cannot say anything, so you know it now. So less accuracy in branch prediction. So that is the difference between superscalar and view. So this is also a question you can frame. What are the two trends? Explain superscalar and view and compare the two. So yeah, that's all for today. Yeah, the reference references I have used is your textbook by Anant Grama. these are the authors. Introduction to Parallel Computing. The soft copy ebook already I have mailed to you. Before concluding, the ebook is with you. One home tutorial also I am giving you. Solve the solved problems from the textbook you are mentioned in the reference slide from these. Just you please note it down, and I will share the PPT also. So these pointers you will have, and you will solve your tutorials and all that. That's why I recommend you a notebook. Though you are doing online, attending on lectures online, just don't sit idle in front of your computers or mobiles. Attend the lectures with a notebook, and this PPTs also I will share after the lecture. So why I have giving you this as a home tutorial, because these examples are self-explanatory, totally based on your memory latency, cache coherency, and all that. So just go through the solved examples and again try to solve it in your notebook. Very simple. So I am giving it as a self-learning through home tutorial. If at all any problem, we will discuss. So that is the end of today's lecture, students. Before concluding, we will quickly revise what we have learned. Yeah. So today you have learned motivating parallelism, that is why parallelism, scope of parallel computing, that is applications. One home exercise also I had given you. Then two parallel computing platforms I introduced you. The two trends rather, with the help of some simple example, superscalar and View architecture, and we differentiated also both. So that is the end of today's lecture. Thank you.